Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have my favorite pet deck from the Romance Dawn era. It is the blue and purple Crocodile leader. It's super unique in a lot of ways, and I do just love the fact that we are already getting these multicolor leaders in this first set of the game. So super fun there, and I've been trying my best at making this deck. I think this is easily the best iteration of it so far, but I would not also be surprised if I'd still want to tinker one or two cards and change some ratios as soon as just dropping this video too. So I think this is something that can be good, and I think it's something that I'm going to consider as a leader going future past Romance Dawn and just keep coming back to, because card draw is pretty unique in this game, and the fact that it's very, very tricky to do. And so having this kind of control leader is very strong. And the same with the blue and purple kind of Kaido leader. If you guys want me to make a video on that guy too, let me know. But yeah, just the idea like, oh yeah, multicolor leaders are better at control from the spec, that it gets more, options than other decks just because they, twice as big a card pool. But at the same time, this only has 4 life. So you do have to, you get 1 less hit point, even though you are kind of more of a control-based strategy compared to a more aggressive-based strategy. So anyways, we're going to talk about this leader and my deck build, starting with the leader itself. Just Dawn ×1, after you activate an event card, you draw 1 card. If you have 4 or less cards in your hand and you haven't drawn a card, using the skill for the turn. So this is a Dawn ×1. This can be on either player's turn as well, so you can use counters on your opponent's turn. You get the card draw, which is quite nice. 4 or less cards in hand is pretty specific. I almost wish it was 5 or less cards, just because that's a little bit easier for what you're doing, but I don't think it's terribly too difficult to do. But 4 or less is sometimes a bit restrictive. Just means that you have to be very defensive on your countering. You have to kind of over counter sometimes, or just, even if it's a small attack or something that you really don't want to have to counter out of, you do, because the weird thing is that if you start taking damage with this leader, then you get more cards in hand, which means you have a harder time proccing the cycle ability there. So something to consider. It's a very unique, because of that. It's a very unique leader. You have to kind of play differently than you would with any other leader, because you get card draw by discarding cards, essentially, or overusing your counters or whatnot. So anyways, going into our character cards, we do have 2 laws. If you want to bump it up to 3 or 4, you can, but just these 1-drop blockers are such a solid card in a game like this right now, and they're never going to be stuck in your hand, because you always can just find a Dawn somewhere to play it. So do like it there. If you want to run at 3 or 4, I would not blame you, but we have that. And then also we do have 4 of the Alvida. So this is a 2-drop from Romance Dawn here. 3k power. It is a plus 2k on the counter, which is quite nice. And Dawn ×1, when attacking, you may discard 1 card from your hand. Return one of your opponent's characters the cost of 3 or less to their hand, which just means that you're able to use this ability to, like, if you need discards, if there's cards stuck in your hand, you can play this turn 2 or turn 1. Swing with it and then get rid of something. So it's good for like early game removal, in the sense that there are sometimes just really obnoxious cards that are on your opponent's board that you want to get rid of. For like good kind of tempo, you'd have to discard a card, but again, you have to get that. It's mostly just for the plus 2k counter, but I did want to mention all of that. Next up, we have our 3 drops. So we have 3 of the Miss All Sunday. It's a 1k blocker, and it is also a counter for 3. And then on KO, if your leader is a Baroque's Work, which ours is, we get to add 1 event card from your trash to your hand. So I think this is pretty good at recycling some of our event cards as well. There's some very good ones in our deck, so being able to get that, I think, is nice. If you want to bump it up to 4, you can, because I'm also running 3 of the Don Quixote Dual Flamingos. This just helps us cycle and see the top cards of our deck. Most card games looking just like having to spend resources to look at the top cards of your deck and not draw them or anything else is kind of rough, but being able to rearrange them and say, oh, next turn this is the best card for me to draw, so I can do it, I think it is a solid. But I think 6 blockers between these 2 are the way to go. So if you like Don Quixote do Flamingo more, go for it. If you like Miss All Sunday a little bit more for the event recycle, go for it. But I think a 3-3 split between the 2 of these is pretty strong. But then also we are playing a blue leader, so why would we not be playing a Sentomaru? Still probably one of the best 3 drops in the whole game right now. So obviously Dawn ×1, you get to use it, and then not only do we have our, I would say, starter deck bears, but we do also have the new bears from the set itself. So it's a 4-drop 5k. It just has blocker, and you can have more than 4 copies of this in your deck if you want. Not having a counter kind of stinks, but being able to say, you know what, I need more blockers, boom, we can use Centaur to get that. Or, being able to just have more copies of this in your deck means you can use this more often. This is a card draw inherently, just because you use this effect to play from your deck, which means that you are playing a card without having to change the size of your hand, essentially. So that's very strong, and it keeps cards out of your hand too. So that means that you're easier. You're going to have a better time at being 4 or less cards in hand with this. So I don't know. Centaur is still just a super strong deck, or super card in blue in general, and it's probably what is going to help bring blue back if it's ever going to see a lot of play in Romance Dawn, which is, at least in the Japanese and Asia meta, is not the case. Anyways, going to our 4 drops, we are running 3 Dracula Mihawks. And the reason that we're only running 3 is because we have other super counters here. It's still fine for what it is. We do also have the X-Drake from the set as well. So this also is a 2k counter. Has an effect of Dawn -1. Your opponent trashes 1 card in their hand. So if we're trying to be very, very kind of hand advantage and resource advantage in our opponents that way, just playing this for 5 and making your opponent discard a card can be really important there too. Obviously, just don't do this outright. Just do it when they don't have a lot of cards in your hand and they have to kind of actually make a decision. If they have like 4 or 5 cards in hand, I wouldn't play this. But if they had like 1 or 2 cards in hand, I definitely would drop that X-Drake down. We're playing a purple leader, so we know we got to play queens. We're running 3. If you want to run more, go for it. 4, I don't ever feel bad with 4 queens in this deck, just because again, drawing 2, discarding 1 is good, though it does give you +1 hand, which means it's hard to do that. But it's a 6k blocker as well. It's a little bit tricky to get out and release, and it's a +1k counter. So if you like this, run it at 4, but I think 3 is the minimum you have to run here, and that's what we've been running. And then we do have the big boy Crocodile from the set, is a 7-drop 7k, and then has a counter +1, and which is most of the reason we're running this on top of Don Quixote do Flamingo in this deck. But it has blocker ×1, banish, which means that if it attacks, your opponent has to trash the card in their life instead of adding it to their hand. And then also, without the trigger as well, right? Without activating triggers. So being able to do both of these is actually quite good. And also Dawn ×1, blue event cards in your hand cost 1 less to play. So you get an 8k banish swing, and then after that, if you are playing a blue event card on either player's turn, which means that these can make your 1k card or one Dawn event cards cost 0, which is incredibly good. So that's something you can keep out with there. And lastly, for our character cards, we do have 3 of these Kaidos. Just a good way to pressure your opponent, get rid of your big boys. If you want to play the 10-drop from the set, I don't think that's a bad idea either. Most of the time, your opponent's boards go kind of wide with this deck because the rest are really defensive, and so they just try to build it up, and then just being able to drop that Kaido and get rid of all their cards on their board, I think helps. Though, since we are playing a Sentomaru build as well, we also kind of want to go a little bit wide in our boards, so that can be something where there's a little bit of not synergy for it. So I think this is a safer pick for us. It's just overall stronger in that regard, but if you want to play the 10-drop, go for it. And then going into our event cards, we do have 4 of the Desert Spadas. This card is just super good. Your leader or one of your characters gets +2k power during the battle, then looks top 3 and then rearrange them at the top or bottom in any order. So it just helps you cycle and also sees what you want to see. And it's the easiest event card in this deck to play, other than the Blast Breath that we're also running, because we are a purple leader once again. So honestly, like the fact that this is just the best with having these 1-cost counters, because these are so efficient at being defensive as well as being able to potentially cycle with our Crocodile leader. That is what I think we are missing from this deck in general, is just more of these generically good 1-cost or less counter cards here. So even though you don't get to play them on your own turn and get the draw there, most of the time when I do that, it just felt like I was just doing it to get the draw, and then I wouldn't really get any benefit from it. So being able to get these counters that replace themselves essentially by being played with our leader, I think is the best thing for it. If you want to play some 2-cost counters, you can also do that, but I don't think it's as necessary. But yeah, I think when we get more of these in the down the line, that will help this deck out a little bit more from being as obscure as it is. And then lastly, we do have 3 Sables. We can play this on our turn, so we can do some stuff with Crocodile, but this is just kind of one of our best generic removal cards. We do have Kaido here, which is good for 6 or less. This just gets 7 less back to their hand and can help you there. So obviously, if they have no cards in their hand, by the way, you could do something silly like you can Sables, and then you can X-Drake there, and then you get rid of it and they have to discard it. That's literally never come up, but that is a combo if you want to think of it in that way. But that is going to be the list for me today. I really do like this leader. I think he's very fun. He's really obnoxious too. He's really, really obnoxious. You take very long to kill him. And if you do kill him, you just still feel really bad about how long it took. So I think that's a win in my book more times than not. But that's going to be it for me. Let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know what next Romance Dawn leader you want me to make a deck list for. And that will be it for me. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.